Hey, what's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome to Moment of Clarity. Got a lot of big stories for you today. We're getting ever closer to nuclear war, which means nuclear Armageddon. Thanks to our lovely leaders in Washington. They're pushing us closer and closer. So I'm going to get into that. This latest announcement by Vladimir Putin and you know, the U.S. response and everything. But I got a bunch of stories for you. I'm also going to show you the latest episode, the newest episode of Most Censored News, on something that is really pissing off Israel. And considering Israel's an apartheid state, I feel like that's a good thing. It's usually a good thing. But all right, let's. But I'm not gonna list all the stories now. We'll get into them as we go. So thanks for joining me. Please take a second to hit thumbs up, to subscribe, all that shit. I am the most censored comedian in America, so I need your help doing that stuff. And I really appreciate it. But all right, this is So this is Putin's announcement. I'm not gonna play it because for some odd reason he speaks another language. I don't know what the fuck he's thinking. He speaks a language I don't speak, and it's very upsetting. Okay, I mean, honestly, learn about branding, man. If you want us to follow your shit, learn to speak of the English. Okay, enough of this bliggity blaggity blah. I don't know what you're saying. That's what average Americans have become. Really, it's not far off from that, honestly. All right, so, but this has some quotes from his speech that clearly has some people freaked out. Although it's exactly what America's been pushing for. I mean, this is so. I know the American government likes to run around like, oh my goodness, look at this lunatic's doing. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, they're like, oh good, he's doing what we wanted him to do. But he has announced he's calling up all the reservists in the Russian military. So there'll be far more Russian military involved in the war in Ukraine. 300,000 Russian military reservists. And here's some quotes. And here's part of the reason why they really loved that. Why they really love that your average American can't follow what Putin is saying, and they never translate it. Like, you never see like CNN's not playing 20-minute clips of Putin with translation. And the problem is they can't play that shit because at least sections here and there, people, your average American will go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, that sounds, at least sounds more rational than our fucking dementia patient we've got running our shit. But no, I'm not a Putin supporter. I'm opposed to the invasion. I've said that multiple times, but I've also given the how exactly the U.S. created this, how we made sure that there was a proxy war in Ukraine. We've been doing it for years. I played video of John McCain back when he was still tottering around. John McCain and Lindsey Graham going to Ukraine, standing in the middle of the fucking neo-Nazi troops and going, we're on your side. We're going to send your help. We're going to send you missiles and guns, and we're going to help you in this fight. That was back in 2015 or something, right after the 2014 coup that we created. But anyway, Putin, here's some quotes. He said the West wants to, quote, weaken, divide, and destroy Russia. Well, now I know that if you watch our mainstream media, they'll go, hey, he's unhinged. What an unhinged maniac. And, you know, I don't support the invasion, but that doesn't sound unhinged. That sounds exactly what the U.S. wants to do. In fact, yesterday, I went through the whole Rand Corporation analysis of what we should be doing in Ukraine to do to Russia. What will be useful in the proxy war in Ukraine to cause harm to Russia? And it's exactly what it says. It says, like, yeah, here's how we work towards breaking up Russia. Now, you may be out there going, great, break up Russia. All right, that's fine if that's your stance. But I'm just saying that part's not crazy. That the U.S. and the West is working to destabilize. That's in the Rand Corporation report. Destabilize, break up, which, you know, creating the 2014 coup in Ukraine was part of breaking up. Now, granted, Ukraine's not part of Russia. However, it was part of the Soviet bloc countries. And so in many ways, Russia still had a natural ally. They were allied with these countries like Ukraine, like Belarus. And the U.S. wants to break those off and stop them from being allies, which, in many ways is working, right? Ukraine is now a full-on feudal state. Essentially, we're trying to create an Israel in Europe, but whereas Israel is kind of like the American compound in the Arab world, we want the American compound on the fucking border of Russia. So he then continued. He said the West, quote, openly says they broke up the USSR in 1991, and now is the time to do the same to Russia. Well, that is also true. That's what they've said. In fact, Joe Biden, when he decided to riff at the end of one of his speeches, which it's always good. It's always good when you got your grandpa who's, on way too many meds riffing at the end of a speech. But he decided to riff that we have to take Putin out of power, which is admitting that the goal of the proxy war is regime change in Russia, which I know many of you may go, oh, okay, well, of course, but that is what we're doing. That is what our goal is. It's been rather obvious, and many top officials, such as Leon Panetta, the former head of the CIA, have called it a proxy war. Have said it is a proxy war, and one of the goals is to weaken and create regime change in Russia. Putin accused the West of engaging in, quote, nuclear blackmail. And you don't have to call it nuclear blackmail, but many in the West have given nuclear arms threats. And we were creating the like beginnings of a possible false flag where we were running around, our intelligence agencies were running around at the beginning of this invasion saying, oh, Russia's gonna set off a nuke. Russia's gonna nuke Ukraine. And then there were other reports from the U.S. government saying, well, we could use tactical nuclear weapons. And anyone with half a fucking brain was like, you out of your fucking mind. Do not create a goddamn nuclear exchange. A nuclear exchange ends with like most of us dead. And the ones who survive not even wanting to be here anymore. Really not. Things are not good. Not good. I mean, KFC would be totally out of chicken. It would just be bad. It'd be bad. You can't find the type of shoes you want. You're really looking for those new Jordans, and they're not going to have them after the nuclear apocalypse. I don't know. Do they still make new Jordans? I don't know. I realize he's been retired for a couple of days now, but I wasn't sure if they keep putting out new Jordans. I thought maybe they did. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's still an antiquated reference. Dude, but the push to use nukes. So again, that quote is, it may scare you that Putin's talking about the West using nuclear blackmail, but I wouldn't call that crazy. That's basically what we've been doing. And then he claimed high-ranking representatives of the leading NATO states had allegedly made statements about the possibility of using nuclear weapons of mass destruction against Russia. Again, that is not really arguable. This is all pretty true. He then continues, to those who allow themselves such statements regarding Russia, I want to remind you that our country also has a various means of destruction. Yeah, just a few. And for separate components and more modern than those of NATO countries. When the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, to protect Russia and our people, we will certainly use all the means at our disposal. Putin said, adding, it's not a bluff. He's basically saying, and I don't know whether it's a bluff or not, but he's basically saying, listen, you're going to threaten a fucking nuclear exchange? We're ready to nuke you back. We don't fucking care. And here's the thing. I'm no supporter of Putin, just like I'm not a supporter of any of the oligarchs around this world. I'm not a supporter of fucking British monarchy and the prime minister there, whatever her name is. Liz Truss is the new one, which is really close to lose trust. and I think that makes a lot of sense. We have which adds to the obvious proof that we are in a simulation, like a shitty simulation. All right, the head of fucking UK is lose trust. The head of the United States is Biden, because we're Biden time until the fucking end of days, till climate chaos engulfs us all. But anyway, let's go along with what let's just for the sake of argument, let's go along with what the U.S. talking points are, with what the U.S. mainstream media, U.S. State Department would say. They would say Biden is out of his mind. He's a lunatic. And in fact, I'm looking at the New York Times, what they said about it right now. They said with his latest speech, President Putin showed that he is at his most dangerous when he is cornered. All right, so let's go with, for sake of argument, let's go with what they're saying. Putin, out of his mind, monster. Okay, I'm not even gonna argue with that. Okay, let's just go with what they're saying. Out of his mind, monster. If that's the case, why would you push him to the brink of a nuclear exchange? You fucking hair plug brained imbeciles. Like, if you want to believe what they're saying, which is Putin is a maniac who will do God knows what, they like to say he's the next Hitler, right? He's the new Hitler. Oh, really? I don't recall us, creating a U.S.-backed coup in Austria and Poland and putting missiles pointed at the Nazi regime and putting fucking maniacs killing Germans on the border. I don't recall the U.S. doing that right before World War II, because Hitler was the Hitler, and Putin. All right, Putin's a different thing. He's a different case, different situation. This is a different world now. So anybody who's just like, oh, he's the new Hitler. Well, you don't actually want to talk about the reality of this situation. No, I just want to pretend something's the same as it used to be and not actually analyze things. So let's go with the fact that this guy's a maniac, can't control him, don't know what he's gonna do. Wouldn't that lead you to believe we should not push for nuclear war with fucking Russia? Isn't that making the argument for those of us who want peace, for those of us who are both opposed to the Russian invasion and opposed to the United States funding and arming Nazis on the Russian border, and the 15,000 culturally Russian people that were murdered before this invasion even took place in the Donbass region by Ukrainian Nazis? Those of us who are opposed to all of that shit, you're making our argument for us that pushing him towards a nuclear exchange is fucking idiocy. And yet that's exactly what we're doing. You're funding and arming Nazis. And as I covered on Most Censored News just the other day, there was actually a peace treaty ready to be signed between Ukraine, Zelensky, Putin, Russia, ready to be signed back in April. That's when they were about to do it. And the U.S., and this is not really debatable. In fact, Boris Johnson admitted it when he went to France. He told Macron that he had gone to Ukraine to tell them not to have peace talks. So he basically said, we are Boris Johnson, at the behest of the United States and Western countries, went in there and stopped the peace process. So we clearly don't want peace. The United States does not want peace in Ukraine. The United States wants to drain Russia as if this is Vietnam, as if this is the Vietnam War and Russia is the United States. And, you can argue it's succeeding in that front, but to some degree, it's draining Russia. I don't think they're dumb enough to treat it the same as we treated Vietnam. But it also is, there's a complete rebounding, a boomerang of the sanctions, and it's harming average Americans. So that's a big difference from Vietnam. I don't mean harming average Americans. Vietnam absolutely harmed average Americans. But I mean the boomeranging of sanctions where we helped create this proxy war, wanted this proxy war because we wanted to create a great splitting of the global economies. I've talked about this before. We wanted to shut down Russia's work, their cooperation, their cooperative economics with France, with Germany, particularly with EU. And we did that. We succeeded in that. Now, why does the U.S. want this? The U.S. wants this for American empire and power. So you can understand all of that. And still, that doesn't mean you have to say, oh, Putin's a good guy. I just love that guy. It does because people want to delegitimize the argument that we should have peace right now by going, just Putin's bad and he's a maniac, and anything U.S. does is good because it's fighting a maniac. And it's like, that's not how it works. We are stopping peace. We are helping Ukrainians die. That's what we're doing right now. And this speech from Putin just shows that the U.S. is pushing everything towards nuclear exchange that would kill a lot of people, millions upon millions upon millions, and make the world unlivable for the rest of us. I don't know. It's unbelievable to watch. To watch us behave this way, to watch our ruling elite behave this way. Anyway, that's a little update on what's going on in Ukraine as we continue this proxy war. So, speaking of soldiers, and I want to move through. I'm trying to get through a bunch of topics, so I'm going to move maybe a little quicker than normal. But speaking of bringing up soldiers, right? Russia just brought in reservists, 300,000, I think. There. Literally, I mean, you couldn't. It sounds like a comedy sketch. This or The Onion or something. So Biden has said he will be getting rid of, or he would be forgiving student loans up to $10,000 roughly for certain people, and I have done segments on this where I've said, well, the devil's in the details. Are we going to actually see $10,000 of all student loan debt forgiven, or is it going to be a tiny subsect of the population that ultimately gets this? And so we have to kind of wait and see. On top of that, we should remember that the student loan crisis has largely been created by Joe Biden because he put through the bill that made sure that students, they're no longer students, but people with student loan debt can't get out of it. That was him in his Senate days. But anyway, and you're wondering what this has to do with soldiers. So some have pointed out that getting rid of even a little bit of the student debt, just $10,000. Many people have $50,000, $100,000 of student loan debt, but just getting rid of $10,000 could hurt the American empire's ability to economically force people into joining the military. We have in the United States, if you haven't heard this term, you should have, or you should write it down. We have an economic draft. We don't have the full-on draft. We haven't had it since Vietnam, right? Basically, the ruling class, the ruling elite learned in Vietnam. They were like, oh, it turns out when you start shanghaiing everyone's sons and daughters and sending them to a fucking insane war where literally you're just seeing how many people you can kill and you're just sending them in there as cannon fodder. When you do that, it creates a protest movement in the United States. Like the parents and the sons and daughters that aren't in Vietnam. Well, actually, back then, I guess it was just sons, maybe. No, there were some women over there. They just weren't on the front lines. They were like doctors and things. But you create a protest movement, and people get very angry when they're unwilling and unwilling and unexcited, shall we say, unenthusiastic. Sons and daughters are shipped over to a country to fucking have bullets whiz by their head if they survive. And so the ruling class learned, okay, well, let's not do that again. Let's not have the draft anymore. The other thing is that with the draft, that the regular draft, a real draft, a full-on draft, often the rich people. Now, the rich people's sons and daughters find ways out of it a lot of the time, but not all of them. So you end up with some of the ruling class actually going over there and fighting, which we can't have that, right? That's not how that works. The rich don't fight in these wars. The real cannon fodder are largely the poor, some of the middle class, but mainly the poor. That's how we want it, right? That's how our ruling class wants it. They don't want their children to have to go fight. What? How? I don't know. If we're gonna send people to fucking die and be in Iraq and Afghanistan shooting at people for fuck knows what reason, it should be the lower class, right? That's how our ruling class feels. So, so we don't have that draft. We now have the economic draft. We have forcing people to join the military. Why do most people join the military? The vast majority join to get their college paid for, to get health care, to get a pension, to get cheaper auto insurance rates, etc. Sometimes you can even get loans and things. So people join the military often for those reasons. Yes, there are some that say, "Oh, I wanted to learn to be tough or something," but the vast majority are joining for those reasons. Which, by the way, remember this argument. If you need to talk to anyone about how our draft works for our military, how our economic draft works, point out that many people join the military in the United States for the promise of socialism. Right? Think about it. That's why a lot of people are joining the military. They're joining to get fucking college education, healthcare, fucking pension. They're joining to try and get some of the benefits of socialism. How hilarious is it that one of the richest, most hardcore capitalists just fucking wearing the big old cap with the C on it that stands for capitalism, and sometimes cunts, but more often capitalism. How hilarious is it that we get people to sign up for our military by offering socialism? we're like, do you want the promises of socialism? Do you want healthcare? Do you want do you want clothing? Literally, we'll buy you uniforms. We'll give you a bunk to sleep in. We'll give you food while you're in the military. We'll give you food, housing, clothing. We'll give you all your equipment you need. We'll cover your education. We'll give you a pension. We'll give you all that shit. We'll give you socialism if you just sign up to fight and kill for capitalism. How amazing is that? Oh God, that is one of the best. I mean, honestly, if you had to come up with a scam, if you had to come up with a fraud bullshit system, that's impressive. That's top scam awards go to that. We'll get people to go run over to other countries and fight for our unfettered capitalist empire. And they might get killed. They might get shot. They'll lose a lot of their friends. A lot of them will come back, but they'll be so fucked up in the head. A lot of them will kill themselves. They'll be so fucking destroyed after that. And they'll go over there to fight for unfettered capitalism because they were offered the promise of socialism. Just don't call it that. Just call it other shit. And then yeah. So, anyway, what's my point? My point is that when Biden offered this $10,000 student loan forgiveness that we're still waiting to see all the details about, many people who are, and I guess you could argue it's more Republicans, but whatever. Many people said, well, that's going to hurt our military numbers. Basically, they don't use these words, but that's going to hurt our economic draft. That's going to hurt our ability to use economic force to pressure people to go get shot at. That's what they're saying. They don't use those words, but that's what they're saying. And I didn't realize this until today. I mean, this article is just from the other day, but just a few days ago. But some of the Congress people literally sent a letter to Biden to say, hey, whoa. You can't get rid of student debt. That will hurt our ability to get people into the military. And like I said, Biden is not getting rid of student loan debt. He's getting rid of a tiny portion of it if it actually happens. That's what he's announced. Watch it not actually happen. But let's, for the moment, benefit of the doubt, pretend it's actually going to happen. U.S. Representative Gallagher sends letter to Biden on impact of student loan cancellation on military recruitment. Representative Mike Gallagher, Republican in Wisconsin, the ranking member of the House Armed Services Subcommittee on Military Personnel, joined Representative Pat Fallon, Republican of Texas, and 19 others. I can't believe they got 21 dick hoses, which is a term I just made up, to fucking get together and write a letter saying you can't cancel student loan debt because, God. Anyway, the members wrote, as you know, some of the most successful recruiting incentives for the military, some of the most, I'll translate as we go because this much like Putin, this is written in a language that people, you can't understand easily. They say, as you know, some of the most successful ways to force people into our death machine, into the mass organized human murder machine, are the GI Bill and the student loan forgiveness programs. The idea that the military will pay for indoctrination during or after completion of service obligation is a driving factor in many individuals' decision to join what they call one of the services, which is really to join the mass human murder organization. By forgiving such a wide swath of loans for borrowers, I don't know if it's a wide swath, you are removing any leverage. You're removing any leverage the Department of Defense maintained. You're removing what is leverage? Leverage is force. It is to have force. That's what leverage is. You have a little stick, you only have a little bit of force to lift up the thing. You have a big stick, you got more leverage, you got a big amount of force to lift up the fucking thing. They literally just said, you're taking away our military's use of force to pressure people to join the fucking military and get shot at and see their friends die. That's what they sent a letter to Biden saying this. This is fucking, oh God. This is like, honestly, this is just a full-on Onion reality. By the way, I used to write headlines for the Onion. So I should know. I used to fucking work there. I used to get $25 a headline, raking in the big cash. The members also specifically asked the following questions. Was the effect on military service considered in the development of the recent student loan forgiveness decision? I love that. Listen, did you sit down and really think about how this could cause people to not sign up to die and murder? Because they won't be as afraid that they will never be able to pay off their student loan crushing debt. Did you see it? Because I feel like you didn't think about that. Did you think about that? Number two, what is the administration's plan to develop incentives to augment the loss of those who might join the military to help pay off student loans? Hey, Joe Biden, what is your plan to trick or force people into our mass human murder machine now that you're taking away a tiny bit of the student debt economic force argument? You have to come up with another way. Are you gonna grab them by the balls and slowly squeeze until they join the military? Are you going to offer them a lifetime supply of Sour Patch Kids? We need to know. How are you going to get them into the military? Oh, man. So, anyway, I have a lot of topics to get to, so I want to move on. But it's just the idea that you could be so morally bankrupt that you sit down and write a letter being like, don't get rid of a fraction of people's crushing student loan debt because it might make some of those people, just a tiny fraction of those people, not join up to kill or be killed. The fact that you'd sit down and be so morally bankrupt, you write that note is just mwah, beautiful, beautiful. This is how you know you're in like the fucking late stage capitalism, late stage empire. This is the proof. This is how you can look at it and go, oh, these are the last days coming up here. All right, I want to move on to the next topic. We'll do one or two more topics, and then this live stream will only continue at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Thank you for joining me on all of the platforms. But as you know, I'm the most censored comedian in America. My main channel was deleted with 250, 300,000 subscribers on YouTube. It was deleted. Over 1,000 videos gone forever. So I've had to move to Rumble. And I'm giving you the link right now of where the Rumble live stream is. So that you can join me there. It's free to go over there, free to watch. It's not a paywall. So I hope you'll join me over there because that's the only place you can watch the whole thing. And that's also where I'll show you the new episode of The Most Censored News, which is my new show with done in coordination with Mint Press. But I write it all myself. So if you're worried anyone would ever tell me what to think or say, you are you can worry no more. All right, so actually this goes exactly with my last statement that this is how you know you're in a late stage empire. This is how you know you're seeing kind of it just feels like everything's crushing down on people. It's just the crushing feeling. You can overhear it lightly in another room, just and people are just pressed more and more, and the ruling elite gets richer and richer, and they just come up with new ways to destroy people more and more, and people are just fucking crushed. And that's how you know. That's one of the ways you know you're in late stage empire. But here's some new numbers for you. Don't think you'll hear this much on the mainstream media. The U.S. is becoming a developing country on global rankings. That's right. You know, and just to give you a little context, you know that we refer, and our so-called leaders, by the way, I don't even think we need leaders. I want to lead myself. But our politicians often refer to other countries as developing, right? And it's the idea that they haven't been. It's funny because I refer to other countries as developing as well sometimes, but it is kind of comical because it's like, they're saying that many aspects of the country have not developed, but they're also saying like they haven't been fully exploited by the capitalist death machine, you know. So developing is this nice euphemism. But anyway, the U.S. is now ranking with developing countries. The United States may regard itself as a leader of the free world, but an index of development released in July 2022 places the country much farther down the list. The UN Office of Sustainable Development dropped the U.S. to 41st worldwide, down from its previous ranking of 32nd. So this is the Sustainable Development Index. Not just whether our country has been developed, but whether we are doing it in such a way where it can continue, where we can continue to have a society, where we can continue to have people doing well and succeeding and being happy, and an environment that continues on with us. Because I feel like when the environment goes, humans won't be far off. By the way, I forgot to mention, folks, I hope you'll join leecamp.net when you're done watching here. Leecamp.net is my locals page, and that's the only way that this show sustains. But anyway, the United Nations Office of... sorry, I read that. Under this methodology, an expansive model of 17 categories or goals, many of them focused on environment and equity, the U.S. ranks between Cuba and Bulgaria. Now, here's the thing. I don't really want to talk down about other countries. In fact, I'm anti-nation state in that I'm like, who the fuck came up with these borders? Like, why Oh, you walk 5 feet that way and you're somehow a piece of shit, and you walk 5 feet this way and now you're a hero. And the fucking deer and raccoons, they're going back and forth all day long. You don't think there's deer and raccoon going across from Canada coming into this country, stealing our jobs? You don't think they go back and forth? Of course they do. So it's only us in our dumb, fucking, sad mental capacity where we're like, God, there's a line there, and I don't like the stuff on the other side of it. I only like the people over here, unless they voted for someone I didn't like, because then I don't like the people over here. And unless they have a different skin color, and then I don't like the people over here. But otherwise, I don't like the people over there. Unless these people root for a different sports team than I do, and then I don't like those people over here. But I don't like the people over there because they're on the other side of the line. That's my perfect impersonation of every American. So we like to point to these other countries. Cuba, right? You'll see endless propaganda against them. One of these countries Trump would call a shithole country. Oh, they're doing all this awful stuff. Oh, Cuba's so terrible. By the way, I visited Cuba for a few days. Seems like most people are doing pretty well. I'm not saying nobody has complaints. Please name a country where people don't have complaints. I think everybody does. Not a surprise. People have complaints about their country, their leadership, their fucking presidents, their whatevers. But people seem to be all right over there. Anyway, we'd love to talk down about them and say all this shitty stuff about them. And here we are on the list of UN developed countries, development and sustainability, right next to Cuba. Right next to them. And what? Below Cuba and above Bulgaria. One slot above Bulgaria. And this is all the funnier because of the way your average American would talk about Bulgaria. If you sat down with another fellow American and you said, tell me what you think about Bulgaria, they'd probably be like, I don't know, shitty country. I don't really know much about them. They don't do much there, right? Sit around, fucking, they'd read books if they have them, but they don't have them, so they just have to read their goats. That's all they do. They just sit around all day reading goats. That's it. That's what I heard. Yeah, I heard. They don't have electricity, so they have to pedal their video games. That's you gotta do. Some of them have hand pedals, so you play video games like this, and then you push a button, and you pedal a little more. But yeah, they gotta pedal their video games. They gotta hand churn their electric dildos because they don't have electricity. So you gotta sit there like this just to get the dildo to vibrate appropriately. It really sucks over there. It's terrible. It's terrible. So anyway, people would like your average American would say, I know nothing about Bulgaria and isn't a sad little shithole. Well, here we are on the list right next to Bulgaria. And they make the point in this article that both of those countries, Cuba and Bulgaria, are often called developing countries. So the United States has now gone down the list back to the developing countries. Where do you hear this talked about on your mainstream media? We are now back down to a developing country. Our what's it called? Average life expectancy has actually gone down the past several years. Our child mortality is like ranked in the 30s or 40s of nations. Like, it's pathetic. The U.S. is also now considered a flawed democracy. That's being generous. I would call it not a democracy. But the U.S. is also now considered a flawed democracy according to the Economist Democracy Index. As a political historian who studies U.S. institutional development, I recognize these dismal rankings. Oh, yeah, I actually want to say I partially disagree with this next part. But, yeah, of course, the U.S. is a flawed democracy. We're not a democracy at all. We are, in every regard, we are not a democracy. And I'll try and make this quick because I know I could get off on this tangent for the next 25 minutes, but I'll try and make it 2 minutes. First of all, we're by definition, not a democracy. We're a republic, right? We have representatives in these houses, the House and the Senate and presidency, etc. Secondly, only 50% or whatever even vote to begin with in our presidential and other elections. So Americans are barely, we're only 50% compared to other countries where there's over 80% are voting. But let's move beyond that. Even if you wanted to say we have a completely legit representative democracy, our votes are absolutely legit, and the people in the House and Congress, they are legit elections. Even if you wanted to say that, studies, large-scale studies, probably my favorite study to talk about, the Princeton study showing that nothing goes through Congress that does not coordinate with corporate America, does not agree with corporate America, meaning the people of America do not actually get what we want unless it is something that corporate America wants, which is not how a fucking democracy works. A democracy, the American people should get what they want if it's what they want. It shouldn't matter whether it aligns with our corporate American fascists. That shouldn't matter. If we want healthcare, fucking there should be healthcare. If we want fucking more environmental regulation, so our goddamn whole states aren't on fire and polluted, and our water, thousands, over 3,000. This is coming from Reuters, which is not even a independent left-wing outlet. Over 3,000 neighborhoods across the neighborhoods and areas around the United States have elevated lead levels in their water that is above Flint, Michigan. Water is not safe to drink in the United States. So let's say Americans wanted clean water, which I think we do. I think if you sat down and talked to Americans, I think we'd say we wanted clean water. If we had a legit democracy, you would see Congress get together and go, let's make this happen fucking now. Let's take some of the $1 trillion, which is a nutty number. I know it's 800 and whatever, 60 billion. But if you add the black budget, the secret budget with the CIA and everything, it's over $1 trillion a year goes to military and intelligence. And let's take a fraction of that and fix all of the water across the United States and give everybody lovely clean water. Let's do that. That's what would happen if we were a legit democracy. Now, those two hypotheticals I just gave you, that's if we had that means that we would not have a legit democracy even if we were voting legitimately. Now then on top of that, you layer on top of that the fact that we don't have legit votes. The person who spends the most, we've bought out elections of what we have. The person who spends the most wins 90% of the time in the House, 80% of the time in the Senate. It's actually over 80% and over 90%. I was just giving the lower estimate. But then on top of that, the two parties that spend the most win 100% of the time because third parties are destroyed. They are outspent by 1,000,000 to 1. And the two fucking bullshit, corporate, militaristic, awful, fucking parasitic, vampire, goddamn Skeletor parties, they win 100% of the time because they spend way more than anybody else can even hope to. So we don't just have a flawed democracy. We have zero democracy. Anyway, last little point from this article. Oh, yeah, and down here he says, when judged by accepted measures like the Gini coefficient. I've talked about the Gini coefficient before. It's an international measure of inequality. I remember doing a segment on it like 5 years ago where it was revealed that the Gini coefficient, the inequality in our country was worse than ancient Rome just before its collapse. And that was 5 years ago. And it's just or 7 years ago. It's just gotten worse since then. But the Gini coefficient in the United States, the amount of inequality is worse now than ancient Rome just before its collapse. Anyway, the writer of this article says, as a political historian who studies U.S. institutional development, I recognize these dismal ratings are the inevitable result of two problems. Now, here's where I slightly disagree. It's more than just two problems, but she says, racism has cheated many Americans out of the healthcare, education, economic security, and environment they deserve. That is absolutely true. Racism is systemic in the United States, and it destroys lives, and it has cheated people out of their well-being. That is absolutely true. But I would say that is an offshoot of capitalism. You have a system that is profit over all else. You have a system where a tiny number of people are wealthy and all the rest are meant to basically slave at jobs they hate in order to fund that system. Racism and other forms of separating people is a necessity because you have a tiny, elite, rich ruling class trying to get 80 to 90%, most of the country, to abide by their system. And generally, if you were to have that and you weren't to break up that 80 to 90%, if you were to let them cooperate and work together and say, hey, we're all workers, we should all unite, we should all cooperate. If you were to let that to happen, that ruling elite would be taken down in a matter of days, maybe months. I'll give you months, but they would be destroyed. The guillotines would be out in minutes if you let that 90% of Americans work together and realize, hey, the true enemy of all of this shit, of everything we're dealing with, our true enemy is that tiny rich elite. And really it's 1%, but I'll say the top 10%. Just to give a little breathing room for these numbers. But in order to rule where a tiny percentage have all of the money and all of the wealth and all of the resources and much of the land and really the freedom, right? Because I've talked before how wealth equals freedom. So if you have all the wealth, you get all the freedom. You can do whatever the fuck you want in society. You can drive as fast as you want. You can you can even have sexual assault charges against you. You can usually buy your way out of those. You can get the top lawyers. You can exploit people. You can fuck people over. You can retaliate against workers, sexually harass in the workplace. You got the biggest lawyers in the world, most expensive lawyers, not to mention the fucking legislative judicial system is set up for you to begin with. You can buy your way out of all that shit. So money is freedom. So when you have a tiny percentage of people with the wealth, the resources, the freedom, the only way they can continue to rule over that large, expansive group of 80 to 90% of the country is to have that 80 to 90% hate each other. That's where racism comes in. That's why it's needed. Racism, homophobia, fucking hating other jobs because they get paid more than you, hating other jobs because they have health care, hating other people because they root for a different sports team than you. Fucking all of those things are useful to our ruling class. And every time we've had a big leader, a leader that actually speaks in large scales and millions of people want to hear what they have to say, anytime they said, hey, let's work together. I don't want to just talk to black people. I want to talk to black and white workers. Every time they say that, let's get together, that's when a bullet somehow mysteriously finds their head. I don't know what that is. I don't know why bullets have a thing against people who say, let's work together to change this system. I don't know. It really, now that I think about it, my biggest pet peeve is bullets. Always finding these fucking people who say, let's work together. Goddamn bullets. So anyway, this person says, he talks about racism. And then they say, at the same time, as threats to democracy become more serious, a devotion to American exceptionalism keeps the country from candid appraisals and course corrections. Yeah, American exceptionalism is definitely part of it. But again, I don't know. That's not the only thing stopping a candid appraisal of what's going on. This is how capitalism works. Like, capitalism is not going to allow you. It owns the. I mean, if you want to say that at the basic level, most people are going to talk about what's on the mainstream media, and now they're cracking down on social media as well, right? That's why I'm the most censored comedian in America. That's why my videos have been deleted, etc. So, if people are going to talk about what's on social media and mainstream media, and now we know those are all owned by a tiny number of individuals. In fact, I've covered how BlackRock and Vanguard are the biggest stakeholders in every large mainstream media corporation, corporate conglomerate or whatever. Fucking Comcast and Disney and Apple, all of them. Top shareholders. Vanguard and BlackRock. So if these are all owned by the same people, what are they going to tell you to talk about? What are they going to tell you the issues are? Well, Go over to CNN.com and see what they're talking about. They're talking about the Queen dying, and they're talking about Donald Trump. That is it. That is all they want you to talk about. They don't want you to sit there going, hey, people are winning gains. Workers are winning gains. People are striking across the country. Wow. Yeah. So it's not just American exceptionalism, like this author says. It's also that our media, and now our social media, is largely designed to make you talk about the things that are kind of the theater of politics, the fucking show that is meant to put a veil over your face so that you don't ask the real questions, so you don't ask the questions that I have been talking about over the past 50 minutes of this live stream. They don't want you to talk about that. So that is why our mainstream media does, that's why they talk about those stories endlessly. It's not that I think that, Donald Trump being a fucking con artist doesn't deserve some coverage. It absolutely does. But when you're talking about half of their stories at CNN are all Donald Trump's a con artist, then it's like, well, what aren't they talking about when they spend all their time talking about Donald Trump, who's not even in power anymore? Well, they're not talking about everything I've been talking about. How the United States is now a developing country. Oh, my God. We're next to Bulgaria on the list. Those people don't even have books. They have to read goats. I know that as a fact. Sorry. That was very rude to Bulgaria. For all the Bulgarians out there, I apologize. I apologize for that joke there. All right. This is obviously going to be a longer live stream than normal, but all of the rest of it will be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Here, I'll give you the link one more time. I'm letting you be lazy today. I'm putting the link in the goddamn comment thread. So, here it is. There's the, it'll be up there in a second on YouTube and Facebook. For those of you watching somewhere else like Rockfin, it's at rumble.com/Lee Camp. I hope you'll go over there right now because that's where this live stream will continue. And I got more news for you. I got more topics. But if you're not headed over there, by the way, I hope you will consider becoming a member at leecamp.net. It's on the screen, leecamp.net. Also, if you're in London, Stockholm, Berlin, I have live shows coming up in London, Stockholm, and Berlin. We're going to have amazing live shows. London, George Galloway, former MP George Galloway's opening the show. It's going to be incredible, and I want you to be there. So grab your tickets. You can find them at leecamp.com. That's my other website, leecamp.com, where I have my live schedule there. All right. Goodbye to those of you who refuse to follow me over to Rumble out of some sort of misplaced love of YouTube or something. I don't know. Misplaced enthusiasm for Facebook.